Well, first, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've got another update here on Big Sioux Media, joined once again by Dr. Summer Schultz. Going to give an update on what's happening at the school. So, once again, thank you for joining me here today. Let's start with the event that's coming up right away this weekend. Graduation scheduled for this Saturday. Plans still the same as they were for the last few weeks?
They are. The weather looks like it's going to cooperate. As everybody knows, we weren't able to have the small individual virtual one, so we are very excited to give our seniors the kind of the departure they are so deserving of, and so we will have the ceremony this weekend. It will be live streamed so that if the public wants to watch it, Big Sioux Media will be live streaming it at 2 o'clock. The graduates and their families know what their plan is for attendance and that sort of thing. We are still limiting attendance just because it is one of the bigger social events of our community, up to this point. And so weather looks like it'll cooperate, and I think it'll be a great day.
Great, and I know some other things that have been happening at the school all summer long started clear back in the spring are some construction updates. Everything's still going well with those, still plan to wrap up before the start of the new school year?
We are. The construction process seems to be going right on track. The last construction meeting I had last week, it seemed like even the entry back into the different areas that we need to occupy first looks like that's right on schedule. So we'll get those who in the district office, they'll get back a little bit quicker. I think the most disappointing part is we're still trying to figure out how we're going to be able to utilize our libraries and media centers and commons areas that we just renovated once we get back to fall. But they will be all done and ready for kids come fall.
And I know that the big topic that we're going to talk about coming up is what does the start of school look like? What are the different plans? But before we hit on that, I kind of want to talk a little bit about Haven, if you have some updates on that, because they've been in session throughout the summer. I think they capped the number of kids that they were going to allow this summer from previous years. But how has that been going throughout the summer with everything going on?
It has been going very well, Matt. I can't thank those two directors enough for the time they have put into reestablishing some normalcy patterns for those kids. Although daycare centers restrictions for social distancing and capacity limits are a little different than schools, it's still hard to structure a full day of activities for kids knowing things like the pool didn't open this summer, or that they have to limit the number of students and children in an area. And so they revised a lot of things to help keep kids safe. They're still doing the temp checks at different points in the day. Staff has dealt with their own, scares of illnesses, which I think is just something that we will be, moving forward with as school starts too. Those COVID symptoms are so similar to others that we are on a bit of a high alert. But so far, we have kept staff healthy when it comes to COVID. We have been able to keep the students there. They've been able to extend into some field trips, even not to the full extent that they have in the past. But overall, it is going really good. And it's great to walk in there and see the kids have, that time together again.
Well, that's got to be encouraging to see that the Haven program has worked so well throughout the summer with all of this, that they're able to do more things with the field trips. As you look to what's going to happen with the school year this year, I know that's kind of the big thing in the news lately, nationally, some recommendations being made, and then we've heard from school districts like Sioux Falls what their plans were. I think that came out in the last day or two. I've seen some plans for Mitchell, and that seems to differ between the two schools. So
they do.
What's Dell Rapids looking like come this fall of what might happen?
What we have this far, Matt, is we have a return to learn document that is very close to being finalized. It will go to the full Board of Education on the 27th of July. The draft is almost complete. And as I had said in the newspaper last week, we have established 4 tiers, knowing that with a virus such as COVID, that this is a fluid situation. We don't know where we'll be from one time to another. And so we are going in on what we call level 2, which is just we plan for on-site learning. We expect our kids to be in school. Now, we also know that some students are considered medically fragile, and that's just not the right environment for them. We also know that some parents are going to choose to educate their children at home in what we'll call parallel instruction. And that's different than what we went into last spring. What we went into last spring was really that emergency virtual learning. Under this level 2, when we have kids here on site, if as a parent they decide, you know what, I'm not comfortable sending my child, then they're taking a little bit more ownership of that virtual distance instruction. We are putting devices called swivels into classroom to help connect our home learners with what's going on in the classroom. But a lot of that will still fall, at the home level. And so our intent, again, is that we will come in, we will work to practice social distancing to the best of our ability. We'll work on hygiene, those things that we can control. But we are planning on an on-site learning instruction for all kids that can be here. The things that are not in place quite yet and that will be developed and approved by the school board and myself by that July 27th Return to Learn final meeting are masks. Masks are one of those areas that I tell you, from one school to the next, it can differ. We have a survey out for parents right now it will close on Friday, that we're asking parents, what is your comfort level with masks, with people who don't wear masks? That's just to get a general consensus, or not consensus, just a general idea of those opinions that are in our community. Right now, masks are something that people have very strong opinions on. And so we don't want masks to be a deterrent for someone to attend school or not to attend school. But we also want to make sure we're providing the safest environment for our staff and for our students. And so we're still trying to decide what that looks like when it comes to masks. If I had to guess, we're looking at times. There are times when we cannot social distance according to anywhere close to CDC guidelines. And so my fear is, if we don't utilize masks to some degree, students are really going to spend a lot of time in one location where we can certainly keep them at an accurate distancing apart from one another. But if we want to get in and utilize areas such as the art room, the computer labs, get kids on the move a little, that could be a time when we say we would really like for masks to be worn then. Now, again, these plans are not finalized. We just don't have a definite answer for masks. That's one that's coming. Transportation is another area, Matt, that will be defined in the next week. Our transportation committee will meet again next week. We have to cohort, and the reason cohorting, keeping kids in smaller groups, maybe it's by grade level, maybe it's even within grade levels, but when we get told that there's an exposure in the classroom or exposure in the school, the more cohorting we can do, the lower the amount of exposure spreads amongst our classrooms. So that if we have, say, some third graders who get hit and they share that exposure of the virus with other third graders, maybe only the third grade group has to not come to school for a couple weeks or for the 3 days while we test things. But if we don't do any cohorting, if we just let it be a free-for-all and put all the kids on the bus together, we can't limit that exposure. And that's when we have to close down the buildings for more kids. I really want it to be that if we have kids who are infected with this or staff, that we can limit the number of students who aren't able to come back onto campus and attend on-site learning. And I can only do that by cohorting a little bit.
So with that, that brings up a question for me is you look at the Haven program then come before and after school when you're trying to keep the kids in their own age group and class groups. How might that look then?
Matt, how does, we are not sure yet, sound. But I can tell you that Lisa we just had a conversation about this yesterday. It's going to go to her advisory board because they have pretty diligent, they have to be diligent about the number of kids per adult. But what she said to me right away was, Summer, I don't want to blow 8 hours of educational cohorting and separation, and then we can't do it at Haven.
Right.
And so she's very much on board at looking at ways they can do that, knowing they still have to staff things, and they still they don't have as many opportunities to do that. But I can tell you that's on our radar. I can also say that right now in-town busing is looking very difficult for that same reason. We give out, or we sell a large number of in-town busing passes each year. But if I cohort all day, but then put kids of all grade levels and ages onto a bus and not be able to separate them, I do think we can do some things social distancing wise on buses for our routes. It's the in-town busing I'm the most concerned with, and that we really have to make some decisions on. One way or the other, I will get the kids from the elementary to Haven. It might take me a few extra trips, but right now that is my intent, is to still transport them, but possibly in some better cohorting situations where we can keep them a bit separated.
And then that kind of leads me into the activities portion of things. You've got your fine arts with the choirs and the band trips, and of course the sports activities where you've got everybody in different grades and levels packing up on a bus and traveling to different events. Any thoughts of how that might look, or are you still waiting for maybe recommendations from the Activities Association yet? Because I know they've got their own task force looking at these things.
They do, and that's what I need people to really understand, is it's not that myself or the admin team have not put in we put in an extreme amount of work into the plan, but it's again evolving, and more guidance is coming down the pike really in the next couple weeks. So for us to have too many real concrete plans a week before the Athletic Association and the Activities Association gives us their guidance would just be a bit premature. So although everyone wants answers, we're ready to have our plan in place too, but we know that guidance is coming. I believe that Activity Association group meets again today, and they are working on some recommendations. Not only are they helping us decide things such as just flat out, are we going to have fall sports? But as superintendents, we're looking for a little bit of guidance on what does spectators look like? Are we going to be playing and only live streaming games? Or are we going to fill up the stands on a Friday night, or at the volleyball game or the cross country meet or whatnot? Are there certain sports that we have to limit travel? We've always kind of preached in our activities that, kids ride together, they ride the bus home. Well, if there was ever a year to say, you know what, parents, if you don't feel comfortable putting your kid on that bus, you can drive your kid. This is probably the year for that to happen. So all of those things intertwine. Transportation intertwines with what our activities look like, but our activities directors, we have a new assistant activity director, Jordan Huska, which with him being the head football coach, he has a little bit more knowledge of what we're up against for the fall. So they are meeting with one of our board members from that committee and myself next week on Tuesday to really get our head around some of those recommendations coming from the Activities Association group. I also believe there's guidance coming on vocal music, like our choir groups. I have it in my head, it's June or July 25th. I'm not sure that that's accurate, but it is coming soon. So again, for me to say we're going to do something with our chorus would be silly at this point until I have the guidance from the state coming with that document.
Sure. Well, is there anything else that, as far as what things might look like coming this fall, you want to share? I know a lot of this, I think you mentioned, is all tentative, waiting for some other recommendations. But anything else that might be important you want to share?
I think that, again, that piece of if you know your child will not be attending school on site, I would encourage parents to when they can reach out to that building principal so we can start getting an idea of how many students will be receiving parallel instruction this fall. We will be asking for a bit of a commitment for that. We can't have students going back and forth, changing their mind. So right now we're looking at about a midterm type commitment. So if you say I'm going to start at home, we would like you to plan for that, knowing that situations do change. And again, they'll be able to communicate any changes of their plan with the building administrator, and we'll work with families. But if people know that they are not coming, we would like them to start communicating with our building principals so that we know what classrooms need those swivel devices, so that when possible, we can have synchronous classrooms going on, so that even if our middle and high school students are choosing parallel instruction for attendance things, when possible, we're going to have them on right with the class. We know that's different in elementary, but some habits were formed probably this spring because it was an emergency virtual instruction. That is not the way the virtual parallel instruction will work this fall. We need to really bring back the rigor. We need to bring back the academic integrity of our classroom setting. And so we bought the technology devices to do that. We're going to front load our PD. I also want to point out that we have amended the calendar. So it's not a big change. Like I have been telling you, I didn't anticipate a big change, but last night at the board meeting, I asked the board to help let me start regular classroom instruction the Monday instead of the Wednesday. It will be the Monday, and I don't have a calendar in front of me. I believe it's the 31st of August. Is that a Monday?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So for a couple reasons, we normally would have started that prior Wednesday. What we are going to be having is a couple days and at least one night. We have to plan this now that I got it approved. A back to school open house. We cannot have all, traditional open houses, traditional back to school nights, but I need parents and I need kids to come in and meet their teachers. I need them to understand what our processes will be for in the hallways. I need them to get the training they may possibly need for virtual learning, because I want it to be that if we end up going from on-site to virtual learning like we did last spring, parents have a plan for that. And so we're going to have technology people to answer those questions. So full regular school will not start till that Monday, the 31st. But your child, your family will have designated times to come in, get to know their teachers, get to know their classroom. Some of our new protocol on that Thursday night, and Friday when school was supposed to start. So that's the only change to the calendar at this time.
Okay, now as far as families who may want to start off at home, is there a deadline as to when they should communicate with the schools, or is it okay for them to kind of wait to that final meeting on the 27th before everything's put in place?
I think it's necessary for me to allow them that time, mostly because for us, for a parent to make that decision, I think they need to see everything in the plan, including the masks, including the transportation, including how we plan to social distance, everything from also, lunchroom, our lunchroom protocols. That all is going into that plan. It's mostly there, other than those couple of areas I talked with you about. But I don't feel it's okay for me to tell a parent, I'm giving you half the plan right now, but I need you to make a decision. So once we have that meeting on the 27th and finalize it, I then will be asking parents, you need to let us know, and we'll probably give a date after that. But again, even if you look at, say, the situation that, kind of went down in a neighboring school community right now, it could change. And I want parents to know that I understand that as a parent, we think we know what's best today, but situation may change. But if they know their child will not be starting on-site, they can let their building principals know right now.
All right. Well, great. I appreciate the time once again for giving us an update, and I'd anticipate a similar conversation after that meeting in a couple of weeks.
Yes. Yeah, I look forward to it. So.
All right. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you.